Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Excellencies, distinguished guests, good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight, and a great big thank you to Her Highness Sheikha Salama for inviting me to be part of tonight's Muntada. Your Highness, your commitment to children is nothing short of inspiring and will be of great benefit to the children of the United Arab Emirates and beyond. Girls' education is a topic that is very close to my heart and one that does not receive enough attention in the Middle East. So I commend you for including it as part of the Sheikha Salama Foundation Muntada. The events that you've held here have enriched the dialogue in important topics through speakers and audiences sharing their knowledge, ideas, and stories. Telling stories is not only one of the most powerful and memorable ways in which to recount history, it also helps preserve what we hold dear, spread knowledge, and create movements. I'm hoping we will do all of these things here tonight. In thinking about the stories I could share with you, I decided it would be fitting to start with my grandmother. Like many of you in this room, I grew up with the stories of my grandparents. As a child, I loved their stories. They gave me a glimpse into a past I never knew, but could almost touch when they described their lives in their homeland of Palestine. I'd never been to their village, but I could picture the land they farmed, their stone house in the center point of the community, and later their displacement and their lives as refugees. As an adult, I cherish these stories even more. They are no longer just stories of my grandparents' past, they are part of my own story, a cornerstone of my values. The more chapters I hear of my grandparents' stories, the more I remember, uncover, and weave together, the more I understand where I came from and where I'm going. As a child, I saw my grandmother as Superwoman. When we visited on our summer vacations, my grandmother baked delicious Arabic bread before even bakeries opened their doors. She washed her whites by hand better than any machine, and she told stories like no one else could. So, imagine my surprise when I find out that my grandmother could not read nor write. I was perplexed that someone who was so smart, hardworking, and witty could be illiterate. It didn't take long for me to realize that this was a sore subject for my grandmother, a regret, a pain she carried, even an injustice. She told me that when she was young, in her village, there were no schools, but some boys went to nearby cities to get an education. In her own family of 4 siblings, her only brother, an only boy, was sent to school to Syria, Egypt, and later the United Kingdom. My grandmother's story is not unique. Almost all of the girls her age and the women of her generation did not have the chance to go to school. In the 1930s, hardly any girls and women in the Arab world went to school. Take a look at this graph. Contrast that with today, and you will see remarkable progress. In only 3 generations, the Arab world has seen over 90% increase in enrollment in primary education. This progress, although very significant, is far from complete. Sadly, the Arab world is still among the regions with the highest gender inequality, second only to sub-Saharan Africa. Nearly 90 years later, my grandmother's story is the story of too many girls in the Arab world. Just look at this graph. Millions of girls in the region are held back from going to school because they happen to live in the wrong place, are not born into enough wealth, or oftentimes both. Poverty, gender bias, and conflict are threats to girls' education in the Arab world. Families living in poverty in rural areas in Egypt, Djibouti, Sudan, Mauritania, and Yemen often choose to send their sons to school rather than their daughters. Parents cannot afford to pay their daughters' tuition fees or need them to stay home to take care of their siblings while they work. Many families also still hold back their daughters because of gender bias in their communities. It's hard to believe, but in some parts of the Arab world, girls' education is still so undervalued that girls have no options because schools have not been built for them, or simply they are too far for them to go to. As if this injustice of poverty and gender bias is not enough, conflict has surpassed them as the biggest threat to education. The Arab world has 13 million children out of school because of conflict. That's higher than anywhere else in the world. Conflict is not only chipping away at the education progress the region has made in the last few decades, it's threatening the possibility of wasting the future of entire generations. Prior to the wars in Iraq and Syria, both countries were making strides in education as leaders in the MENA region. However, war has drastically affected all children, especially girls. In Iraq in 2010, girls accounted for only 44% of students, and almost 75% of them dropped out in primary school. In Syria, millions of girls and boys are out of school. Hundreds of thousands more are currently living in Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey and facing the same fate. Shut out of nearby schools, faced with fear of harassment and violence, and unable to provide for their children, many families choose to marry their daughters before they turn 18. The rate of child marriage among Syrian refugee girls has doubled from 12% to 26% in recent years. Those aren't just statistics. Each one of them has a name, has dreams and hopes for the future. Over the past 3 years, I've met hundreds of these girls and their parents from Syria, Iraq, and Palestine. I met Samia, a 6-year-old girl who lives with her mother in a tent in Akkar on the border with Syria. Her mother pleaded with me to help her find someone to cure Samia, who stopped speaking when a shell hit their home back in Homs, and they lost everything. She wanted to send Samia to school, but refugee schools run by UNICEF and Save the Children in the area don't have the resources to teach children who are deeply traumatized. I met Khadija, a 14-year-old girl who attended 2 hours of English classes a day run by a Lebanese NGO called Ana Aqra. Her father does not allow her to go to school, not because he doesn't believe in education, but because the school is too far and she can't walk there and he can't afford to send her by taxi. Khadija's teachers told me if they don't find a way to help her get to school, she'll have to get married and hope that her husband can pay for her. I met Iman, a 15-year-old girl who was taking a vocational training course run by an organization called Anera. She told me her dream of having a better life was crushed when she lost hope that she will make it to Europe. Iman's family had drowned on the shores of Crete that summer as they were trying to make their way to Europe. The stories of Samia, Khadija, and Iman are heartbreaking, but they don't have to end there. Education can help heal them, It can help them rebuild their lives. It's their only hope for a better future. None of these girls I met had ever given up on their right to education. So why have we? Educating girls is not about charity. It is one of the best investments philanthropists, businesses, and governments can make. We know that when an Arab girl has the chance to go to school, she stays longer and does better than boys. So much so that in countries in the region, including right here in the UAE, young women have surpassed young men in finishing high school and going to university. We know that educated women spend more of their income on their family and invest a larger portion in educating their children, including girls. We also know that educated women raise healthier children, protecting them from diseases such as malnutrition, diabetes, and pneumonia. All of these facts breathe new life into the old Arab proverb, al-ummu madrasatun إذا أعددتها أعددت شعبا طيب الأعراق. This in English means a mother is a school. If you prepare her, you prepare a great nation. At this point, I can almost hear many of you thinking, we get that, but what can we do? Are there solutions to these massive challenges? The answer is yes, there are solutions. I'd like to share with you at least 3 things that you can help with. First, for children affected by conflict, you can support the new refugee education plan. It has 4 urgent goals: to scale up access to primary education through double shifting public schools and funding more teachers. You can support targeted strategies to reach the most vulnerable refugee girls and boys through secondary, vocational, and post-secondary education and early childhood education. Invest in early learning to help refugee children adapt and succeed in their country's education systems, the host country's education systems. And create alternative learning opportunities for the many kids who will never be able to go to state schools. As a result of this plan that I'm talking about, in Lebanon alone, 207,000 refugee children are now going to school in the afternoon, in the same public schools that Lebanese children go to in the morning. In Jordan and in Turkey, a similar affordable approach is being developed. But hundreds of thousands of children still need help and could begin going to school if the funding becomes available. At the World Humanitarian Summit in Turkey in June, the international community is expected to launch the first humanitarian fund for education in emergencies. With the help of philanthropists, businesses, and governments right here in the UAE and in the region, this fund could be shaped and supported in a way that it brings the most benefits to those 13 million children who are out of school right here in this region, especially girls. Second, use your expertise. Many of you are professionals with resources, skills, and networks that are needed to come up with new ideas and innovations. Know your niche and learn how to complement efforts on the ground. For us at the Abdullah Al-Ghurair Foundation for Education, we have chosen to focus on youth ages 15 to 24. Through 3 programs targeting high-achieving students who don't have the financial means and the support to continue their education, we will provide the finances and resources to help them access the best education possible. Our programs will start right here in the UAE, but will also expand to include the most vulnerable youth across the region, including girls and refugees. But we're only one organization. We hope many other foundations and businesses will also help in the best way they can. Finally, use your voice. Create platforms like this one and share the stories of Samia, Khadija, Iman, and the millions of girls like them, so that their voices can be heeded, not just heard. Using our voices when it matters is an opportunity not to be wasted. We may not realize how precious it is until it's taken away from us. Using my voice has taken on a new meaning for me lately. Last week, my grandmother had a stroke. She lost 2% of her brain, and with it, control over one of her arms and her legs, and most devastatingly, her tongue. Shocked by this turn of events and frustrated by her inability to neither speak nor write, we all feel her pain, her regret for not ever having gone to school. She lost her ability to tell stories, but her stories live on through me and my children, and now through you. That's the power of stories. They have the power to inform our past, but they can also guide our future. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Your Highness, dear ladies and gentlemen, our sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum. We are here to talk about the importance of education. Today is a day that the world is in turmoil. Everywhere is a problem. What we are looking around us, there is the issue that boys and girls, men and women are involved. What we are going to do about it? Oh, well, we all know education is important. What kind of education? Is reading and writing is good enough? Are we going to accomplish what we are all about to really have a better world? I don't think so. For many, many, many years, we keep reading and writing, but we are not really thinking. So we need a change. We need a system of education to be different. We need a system of education to really create an environment that our young, our old, they all think critically. We must teach critical thinking. Why I am talking this to you? All of you are educated. All of you know about the importance of education. But I think education is the vehicle for poverty. Education is a vehicle for war. Education is a vehicle for prosperity. So, how we are going to use this vehicle? The best way to use is to really listen, to really share, to get the community to be involved, to give a credibility to the community. Don't deny them. Ask them what they want. Ask them what they know. Get them involved. Why I am saying this to you? You know, when I was a little girl, I was in Afghanistan. I want to tell you about my life, a little bit, where I am coming from. When I was a little girl, I was in Afghanistan. It was a beautiful country. We lived comfortably. We were not very rich, but we were living safe. We didn't have to close the door of our house. I could walk in the street with my father, holding his hand, going to the mosque, learn how to read and write. But later on, that Afghanistan did not exist anymore. The kids could not walk on the street alone. There wasn't a school. The school will be bombed. The school will be burned. The girl will go to school, the acid will be poured on them. So that environment is completely changed. Why? Why this happen? Because of greed. People become greedy. People start just thinking of themselves, and they forgot about other people. You know, we are Muslim. God created all of us equal. In the Holy Quran, it says all men and women are equal. God, the first word that is delivered to us, it says, Iqra, read. But we completely, what we did, we said we only work with one group of people, and that's only men. And if we work with men only, we reach half of the population. We could not survive with half of the population. Education is very, very important to men and women. Together, we can build a nation. I went from Afghanistan to United States because Afghanistan was invaded by Russia. Russia did horrible things in my country, completely destroyed my country. So I went in Afghanistan because I strongly believe in education. I was coming from a good family. My father was very open-minded. He encouraged me to get education. He was supportive of me. So he sent me to United States because he thought there is trouble in Afghanistan. But you know what? I went there. When I was studying, my heart, my mind was in Afghanistan. You know why? Because when I was a child, every day I hear a cries of a woman, because that woman was losing her child in a very young age. I hear a cry of a child losing his mother because that mother was dead, was carried to the graveyard because she was delivering a baby. We didn't have a good system. We didn't have doctors. We didn't have nurses. We didn't have educated society. As a result, there were issues day after day. You can imagine, as a young kid, how I was feeling. I was devastated. Every day, I thought I am losing my mother. My mother had 16 pregnancies. From 16 pregnancies, we are only 5. You could imagine how I felt every day. And that was the reason that I really wanted to be a doctor. I really wanted to study and help the women of Afghanistan. There were days that I hear family dispute, beating, yelling, crying, because the family were fighting, quarreling with each other. So I went to the United States. I completed my education, but my heart was there. While I was completing my education, my family became a refugee in Iran. So you know, when you are a refugee, you are not the same as others. It's not your country. I became a refugee in the United States. My family became a refugee in Iran. You lose your dignity. You lose your resilience. You don't believe in yourself. You think you are a second citizen. So you have a lot of issues to deal with. And that was the time that I really wanted to go back in Afghanistan. But I couldn't. My family were in Iran. I was in the United States, and I completed my education. I had a wonderful life in the United States. I was a successful professor. I was teaching science. But what I'm going to do there? My people were there suffering in the refugee camp in Pakistan. There were 7.5 million people in the refugee camp. 7.5 million. So I said, I am going to bring my family to the United States, and I will go back to Afghanistan. Of course, that's I did. It wasn't easy, but I did. As soon as I went to Pakistan, because I could not go to Afghanistan, do you know what I saw in the refugee camp? Women, children, old men, young men, they are all were miserable. They were telling me story after story, horrible story. It broke my heart. It was so bad that day and night I had nightmare sitting with them and seeing what they went through, because I was also a refugee. My family were a refugee. I felt what they felt. I was lucky, but I didn't see as much as they saw, but sure enough, I saw. What could I do in that refugee camp? I went to help. What could I do? I wasn't very rich. I could not support 7 million people, but I look around. And you know, I saw that one thing that changed my life, transformed me, gave me stability, gave me wisdom, gave me a status, gave me a position, gave me economical status to help my family. That was education. Education was my tool to bring me up to the world. And that happened to me. Why not with my brother and sister? Why not with those refugee people who were living in that camp and not having anything? So I start a system of education. But at that moment, I told myself that when I was in Afghanistan, the system of education was rote memorization. You go and you learn and you forget about it. But you were not doing critical thinking. So I said, the first thing we have to do, we have to train the teacher. Because if you have a good teacher in the classroom, your students will stay in the classroom. If you have a methodology that's innovative, creative, you can help the students to learn. And that's we went after that. So we wrote manual, we wrote 8 manual for teacher how to teach in the classroom. And you know, I went to people, to community after community. It was the time that Russian took over Afghanistan. People all were against education. Before we had problem also, but this time worse. Everybody was against education. They said, we don't want our children to go to school because look what happened. Russian came, invaded Afghanistan. We are not going to deal with this again. They didn't want. But you know what? I went to the mosque. I went to the mosque. I talked to the mullah because I knew that mullah will be listened to. People will listen to him. I went to the mullah. I told him, I want to help you to teach. And he looked at me and he thought I'm crazy. He said, you teach me? I'm not a teacher. I'm an imam. I told him, don't be worried. I will work with you. I help you. And you know, for 3 months, day after day, I went through the mountain and sat with this mullah and taught him how to be a teacher. Teach him methodology that it teach critical thinking. But do you know that his wife, his daughter-in-law, and his daughter and himself become a teacher? In matter of 1 year, we start having tent inside his compound. In 1 year, from 300 students, we start having 15,000 students. 15,000 students. You know why? You know why? Because in the refugee camp, there was a teacher, there was an engineer, there was a doctor. They all were sitting in the house doing nothing. Every one of them came and said, I want to open the school. What was our policy? We want you to open the school. You give me the space. You through community participation help me. I help you. Whatever you could. They were refugees, they were poor, they didn't have that much. But at least they could have a doorman. At least they could have a teacher. And through that, listening to them, asking them what they think, it helped us to work a team effort. And a team effort which it comes from your heart. People loved it to help each other. Through that community, people start communicating with each other, sharing with each other. And that really helped to build the system. We changed the system. Those students, they very faithfully study, but also it was only from 1st to 6th, and that's not enough. Education is, yes, 1st grade through 6th grade or through 12th grade is fine, but you have to have higher education. You have to have a higher education to build your nation. Our nation was completely destroyed. People from inside Afghanistan, they come to me and they want to open a school because the Taliban were not allowing the girls to go to school. So again, we use the same method. We communicate with people, we talk to people, hours and hours. We sit and so, okay, If you help us, you give your house, you protect the children, you protect the community, you choose the teacher from your community, we will help you. And you know, they did that. And we had 80 schools inside Afghanistan, 3,000 in 4 provinces of Afghanistan, 3,000 students. That was an easy task. You know what could happen. If a teacher was caught or a child was caught, they will be killed right there. But you know what? Because people work from the heart, because they have dedication to their work, because they believe in education, they saw education is the way out of this poverty, and education is the way out of war. So they start sending their children to school, girls and boys. I am sure some of you might right now say, well, you're talking to us. Look at Afghanistan today. Yes, we have problem. My heart is bleeding for Afghanistan. Why I am sharing this with you? You are young men and young women. You have duty. You have responsibility for your brother and for your sister all around the world. To reach out, to help them, to help yourself. Because that's the way God told us. That when you help each other, it is your jihad for education. Education is a jihad. We have to do with each other, to help each other, because the ignorant society will continuously keep going ignorance. And you know, today the war. And because of that, people were really excited, and they start learning. You know, today AOL is a huge organization. We start with $20,000 of my own personal in refugee camp in Pakistan. Today, we are $3 million project. But $3 million is with community participation, in-kind participation. If we really in cash-wise, we count, it's $6 million project. Do you know that AOL has reached 12 million people, men and women? We believe that men and women should get education, because if those men are not beside us, the women could not do that much. And if the women are not beside men, they could not do that much. Together, they make the balance. Together, they can build community. There are many, many men amongst this group or other group who really encourage their daughter to go to school. We should give a hand to those men. Please give a hand to those men who are really encouraging their daughter. Thank you very much for those women. Yes. We need you. We need you very dearly, because you are the one who protecting us, who you really help us, and we help you. And that's the reason gender equality is very important. AOL is reaching millions and millions. We have a school all over the country. We have 352 women learning centers. And those women learning centers no longer just education how to read and write. There is discussion, there is a debate, there is democracy, there is peace education, there is poetry, there is all kinds of subjects being taught, and they are debating with each other, and they are learning from each other. And that makes our society aware what's going on around them. That's the reason today Afghanistan has a prime minister, a woman. Afghanistan has a governor woman. Afghanistan have an MP woman. Although we have war, we have conflict, but we are having those women on that higher position. Today, the women of Afghanistan traveling to Pakistan, to Iran, to Dubai, and doing business, bringing their commodity to this country or the other country and selling and making business. Before, the women of Afghanistan could not get out of their house. They are blossoming. They are really empowered. What we are trying to do, empower women. Today, be self-sufficient. If they are self-sufficient, they are not going to raise their hand for money for something. You know, when you have a good economy, you are strong and you have something, somebody will listen to you. But if you don't have a good economy, if you are poor, nobody will listen to you. And they feel sorry for you. Afghanistan today, people do not want that people sorry for them. They have pride. They have heritage. They have poetry. They have old, ancient history. I am so proud of this foundation that Her Highness is focusing on education, early child education. How important is that? Very, very, very important. If you really educate your child from the time that they are very little, they grow up to be the smartest one amongst all their nation. They learn a lot because their mind is open to learning. Also, Her Highness did another wonderful thing that we all should be aware of it, and that is art and culture. Art, language, and heritage is something that every nation identity. And we need to keep those identity. We do not need to lose them. That is very important. In my country, we lost them. We had a 1,000 years old, 2,000 years old history. Through the war, we lost them. But today, we are to try to bring them back. We have problem. We have conflict right now. There are a school that still is being burned. The kids are going to school being kidnapped. The family are so unpredicted, like they don't know if tomorrow morning they will be there. Everyone who goes to school or go to work, they don't know if they return back home because on the way they could blown up. But none of them stop. None of them stop and sit in their houses. Poverty all over Afghanistan. Do you know we are not a humanitarian organization? Just before I came here, 2 weeks before that, do you know for 700 people inside Afghanistan who could not have a piece of bread on their table, I give flour, rice, oil, sugar, and tea. That is something that it's not our task to do because we are educational program. But the situation is so bad. There is no job. There is no electricity. It's a cold weather. But you know, people come in the classroom. That's the beautiful news. They come in the cold classroom and they sit and they learn because they know that education really changed their life. Education really built their nation, and education is the only issue that they can concentrate and really change the country. When you have ignorance people, when you have people who are not educated, your country is in a chaos situation. Let me tell you about a story from a center that I operate. I went one village very far away, about 2.5 hours from city of Herat. I went there to build a center. In that center, there was a woman come there. She was weeping, crying, and what do you want? What's the problem? She wanted to be in that center to learn, and her family were not allowing her to come. So she wanted me to go and talk to her father, to her father-in-law. She was very young, but she has 4 children with her. So it was not an easy task for me. I went to their house. They were very, very poor. They were in a village. I sat with the men and I talked to them. I said, she is smart. She wants to learn. Don't you want to have healthier children? Don't you want your house change? Don't you want to have a better lifestyle? He said, yes, why not? I said, what do you do? He said, I am a farmer. I said, why don't you let her to learn? And you know what? He learned, sent her to the program. In matter of 4 years, this woman finished 6th grade. She became a health supervisor, health post supervisor. She learned how to sew, and at night she sew at home and earn an income. And during the day, she was in a center as a teacher. And she built her, what? Her economy. Her husband came to me one day, and he said, I thank you. I thank you, my life, my children's life are changed. That's the way you want to do, that they be self-sufficient. And really, they have potential. They have the knowledge. They want to change. Do not miscalculate women. Do not miscalculate Muslim women. All around the world, when I give presentation, people, oh, they feel sorry for a Muslim woman because they are wearing hijab and maybe they are brainless. I am sorry. I tell them, I am sorry. You do not know a Muslim woman. You do not know how to talk to a Muslim woman. Sit and have a conversation with a Muslim woman. See how smart they are. See how intelligent they are communicating with you. See how powerful they are. See what is their vision, what innovation they have. Look at here. All of you want to change. But I think it's about the time that we all hold together hand and really start sharing our knowledge. It's not good to learn, but keep it in here. It's good to learn the knowledge and share and teach each other. Every one of us have responsibility to teach 10 other persons, if nothing else we can do. That is our duty as a Muslim. We must do that. If we keep it in here, God will not forgive us, because that's the way God wants us to share this knowledge, that our society live better, live healthier. Do you know that the diseases, the poverty, the early child marriage, my colleagues talk about it. I was going to talk about those. But those are all the issue, that all the outcome of lack of education. If you have educated society, you will not face those problems. We have 6 clinics in Afghanistan. Do you know that when we start those clinics, the people will not come to the clinic to see a male doctor? The women could not see a woman doctor either, because they were not allowed to see. They were putting their hijab from the women. From me, they put their hijab. But we start working with them through health education, through counseling. Today, those community, those clinics, people are pouring in that clinic. 2,000 patients a month in each clinic. We see the average of 14,000 patients between 6 clinics a month. Can you imagine that? This is huge. That is the way that you do. You try to educate the community. They were delivering baby at home. Now, everybody come to the clinic, they do immunization, they deliver their baby in the clinic. We have a hospital. They come to the hospital, they see the doctor, they get counseling also. We have an orphanage also. We have 400 children on orphanage. They don't have a mother, they don't have a father, they have nobody. We give them identification card because we don't know where they come from. Through the war, they are on the street. We go and collect them and bring them to the orphanage. And now they read and write. They behave good. They work, they learn a skill. They sew their own clothes. They learn computer. They learn English. They learn Quran. That is the way it is. Education change. Education change life. So I can stay here and talk forever. I do not want to bore you, because as a teacher, I don't like lecturing. Also, I like participatory methodology. That is the way I teach. But I want to tell you that if you want to get rid of war, concentrate on education. Education, education, education. If you want to get rid of poverty, concentrate on education. Help build a school, help build a center, help people who are not able to go to school. Take 2 or 3 children, support them. Do whatever you could do. Any little things that you do, it matters. It matters a lot. And that is, I hope, that you take from here. And thank you very, very much. I am so honored to be here. Thank you very much, Your Highness. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much, really. Thank you. Thank you.
Tererai Trent grew up in this remote village in Zimbabwe. She was raised in a hut with no running water or electricity and little hope for the future. She traveled back here to tell us her remarkable story.
They're saying work hard, work hard. Now we welcome Tererai. She has worked hard.
It was a homecoming for an unlikely hero. To these women, Tererai Trent has become a symbol of hope.
As a little girl, I was desperate to learn. I was secretly doing my brother's homework, and I learned to read and write from my brother's books.
Eventually, a teacher discovered their secret and begged Tererai's father to let her come to school. But after only 2 terms, Tererai was married off, and by the time she was 18, she was already a mother of 3.
When my husband realized that I wanted to have an education, he would beat me. I have nightmares of that time of my life.
In 1991, a woman from an organization called Heifer International visited Tererai's village.
She started asking us what our hopes and what our dreams. And I remember very clearly saying, my name is Tererai and I want to go to America to have an education. And she just looked at me, if you desire those things, it is achievable. Then my mother said, write those dreams down on paper and bury them. And if you truly believe in those dreams, then you'll see them grow and grow and grow.
Tererai wrote down her dreams that day, placed them in a scrap of tin, and buried them under a rock.
There it is. My mother said, you are the last person to break this vicious cycle of poverty, and I want you to do that. And I did it. I did it.
I wanted to surprise her because, as often happens with people who are living from the fullest part of themselves, you work hard, you accomplish, and then you want to share those accomplishments, what you have achieved, with other people. And so I wanted to help her make that dream come true. And so what did it feel to walk across that stage just this past year and get your doctorate degree?
It was so unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. What is your dream now?
I feel I need to give back. Mm-hmm. It's not only about Tererai, but it is about thousands and millions of children that are out there, thousands and millions of girls that are not having the education. Mm-hmm. I need to build a school in my village.
Trying to build a school?
I'm trying to build a school.
When Tererai was here in 2009, we got a glimpse at the horrible conditions of the school. The buildings are literally falling apart, holes in the ceilings, force children to sit along the walls when it rains. And most of the classrooms don't have desks, so the students do all their reading and writing on the floor. And the teachers have no supplies, and as a result, there's a dismal 14% pass rate. I have been so moved by your story. Your story is, you know, at the core of everything I believe in the possibility of a human life here on earth. And for that reason, I am going to help you rebuild your school. I'm donating $1.5 million. Yes. I'm donating $1.5 million to... And I want you to have help doing it because I know it's hard. Save the Children is going to spend 3 years working with teachers and children and parents in the area to improve literacy and basic education. So ultimately, 4,000 children will have a better education because of you. We're going to build a school together. We are going to build a school.
It is achievable.
And it is achievable. Ooh, that makes me so happy. That makes me so happy. You know, if you will roll the tape and you will see that moment where when she first comes out and we first look at each other, that is just a solid moment. That is a woman to woman. That is a I see you, I know you, I know who you are, and I know what it takes to do what you have done. That's what I call holy moments, when you look at somebody and you feel the fullness of who they really are. That's what that moment is about.
Your Highness, thank you for having me here. I know no other weapon to fight social injustice in my life except education. I know no other weapon to fight illiteracy in my life except education.
I breathe education. I think about education because I realize that at the core of our humanity is education that is going to uplift us from our situations. I remember Chief Seattle, in one of his speech, he noted, humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do it to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect. Our survival is tied to the survival of others. We are here for a purpose. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I come from a long line of generations of women who had been married very young. My great-grandmother, she became the 6th wife to my great-grandpa, and she was just a baby. My own grandmother, she became the 5th wife to my grandpa. And then my own mother. She ended up taking care of many siblings that my father had sired with other women and brought these kids to our family. But when I reflect on these women, they were brilliant women who had been denied education because they were women. That's where I'm coming from. But all I wanted was an education more than anything else. My father accepted a cow in exchange for my marriage. You see, ladies and gentlemen, by the year 2000, United Nations had all these global leaders coming together, and they declared that by the year 2015, all children everywhere, boys and girls, would have achieved universal education and closed the gap, the gender gap, enabling everyone to be in school. But where are we now? Today we are in 2015. We have 62 million girls that are denied the right to education. And Sub-Sahara becomes the highest region with almost 55% of children not attending school, and with almost 52% of adolescents out of school. And the majority of those numbers are girls. But who are these girls? Data is telling us that these girls, they come from poor rural families where their own mothers and grandmothers never attended school. That takes me right into my story, and it takes me right into the work that I do. By the time I turned 18, I was already a mother of 3, and one child died as an infant because I could not breastfeed that child. I was a child myself. By the time I turned 22, I was just a battered woman expecting my 5th child. Without a high school diploma, I knew that my own girls were going to go through the same pathway that my great-grandmother had gone, that my grandmother had gone, that I had gone. And I did not want that because I wanted my children, especially girls, to have a better life than what I was going through. I come from Zimbabwe. I grew up in a small rural village where there's no running water, no electricity, and even up to this day, we don't have running water or electricity. After we gained independence, a stranger came to my village, an American woman. Her name is Jolak. She found me with other women sitting in a circle, and she asked one question: "What are your dreams?" Huh? Women having dreams? Yes, what are your dreams? I was quiet. I didn't know what to say, but I knew deep down in my heart, all I wanted was the ability to read and write. All I wanted was the ability to be an empowered woman so that my own children would not go through what I had gone through or what I was going through at that moment. I opened my mouth and I said, I want to have an education. What kind of an education? I want to have an undergraduate degree. I want to have a master's and a PhD. The other women that were in the same circle, they looked at me and say, how can you? You don't even have a high school diploma. But the stranger said to me, if you desire these dreams, and if these dreams are coming from the depth of your heart, they are achievable. And she used the word tinogona. In my language, it means it is achievable. Oh, that lifted me up high. That gave me the confidence that I needed. I ran to my mother and I said, Mother, I met this woman. She made me believe that I can achieve my education. My mother said to me, wow, Tererai, if you do this and if you believe in these dreams, you write them down. And when you achieve these dreams, not only are you defining who you are also defining every life that comes out of your womb and generations to come. And I knew at that moment I had to achieve my dreams. I wrote down, I want to go to America. I want to have an undergraduate, a master's, and a PhD. I come from a culture where when a child is born, they snip the umbilical cord, you know, the birth cord. They take the mother's old dress, they tie the umbilical cord in the mother's dress, and they bury that umbilical cord deep down in the soil with the belief that when this child grows, wherever they go, whatever happens in their life, the umbilical cord will always call them back to their birthplace. Those were our tradition. So my mother said, if you believe in your dreams, you bury them deep down in the ground, the same way we bury our umbilical cord. My mother wanted me to have some point of faith, something to hold on. Wherever you go, no matter the abuse in your life, these dreams that you bury, they will always call you back. They will always remind you of their importance. So I was ready to go and bury my dreams. And my mother said, can you read back your dreams? And I read my 4 dreams. And my mother said something so profound. Your dreams will have greater meaning when they are tied to the betterment of your community. It's not about accumulating those degrees. It's not about going to America, but it is about what comes out of your dreams and in what ways are those goals connected, tied to your community. So I ended up writing my 5th dream. When I'm done, I want to come back and improve the lives of community. You know what? I just wanted to please my mother when I wrote that 5th dream. I buried my dreams. It took me 8 years to accomplish my high school diploma. 8 years of failing, 8 years of struggling to get the next tuition for the next class that I needed to correspond. But 8 years of never giving up, because I realized that I was on a mission. I found myself at Oklahoma State University after I accomplished my GED. It was tough. I came to the United States of America with 5 children. I completed my undergraduate in agriculture. The years were tough. I remember at one time we were living in this small apartment, and the kids, as they were brushing their teeth, you'd see the gums were bleeding. And I realized that they were missing their vegetables and fruits. In America, unfortunately, those things are expensive. And yet in Africa, you just go to your garden, you go to the forest, you get fruits. The university said, you know, we can go to a local supermarket. At the end of the day, at times they throw away vegetables, they can feed your children. The local guy says, you know, we cannot do that, because if you feed your children with these fruits and vegetables, if anything happens, you may end up suing us. And I said, I have no dime to sue nobody. Just give me the fruits and vegetables. I just need to feed my kids. The guy said, well, here's what I can do. I'll take the fruits and vegetables, we place them near the trash can. Make sure that we'll place them in a cardboard box. Make sure that you come and pick them at 4 o'clock. I used to take about 18 hours of class and work 3 jobs to maintain the family. 3/4 of the time I was late to that cardboard box, and I would find the cardboard box right into the trash can, into the bin, and I would lift it up, wash, and feed my children. Who am I to complain that my own children are eating from the trash can when I know that there are thousands and millions of children in sub-Saharan Africa who are living on the streets? Who am I even to complain that I live in a trailer park where there is no air conditioning, when I know there are thousands, if not millions, of women who are living on the streets, and some living in shelter homes, and they have nothing? Who am I? I finished my master's. Now I was experiencing what they call poverty in America, and I needed to take a break and go and work. And I started working. My first trip home, I went to that place where I had buried my dreams, unearthed them. Check America, check undergraduate, check master's, and I could see 2 dreams still looking at me. I came back to the United States and enrolled myself into a PhD program. And I graduated with my PhD in evaluations. I remember the day that I received my PhD. I was walking to that podium to receive that paper that now says, you are Dr. Tererai Trent. I felt like a lawyer who had rested her case to the world. And my argument statement was, and if there are lawyers in this room, please don't quote me. If we give opportunities to those who are marginalized and torn down by the social ills of our time, they can achieve their dreams. If we give opportunities, education opportunities to women and girls, oh boy, that's the best investment any country could do. Because women and girls, we are the movers, we are the shakers, we need that education, we can make a difference. Now that I have my PhD, you would think I'm happy, but somehow I could not find that deep joy in me. That 50th dream that my mother said write down kept on haunting me. How on earth was I going to achieve that 50th dream of giving back to my community? Why can't I just be happy with my PhD and my life in the US? This is the dreamland. Why can't I just be happy? I couldn't sleep. Then I remember that the woman who came to my village, she said, Tinogona, it is achievable. And I'm thinking, whoa, I'm going to design T-shirts and then have that word Tinogona, it's achievable, and I'm going to sell these T-shirts and go home and build schools. And I'll start with my village, so that when I go there, the women and the men in my village, they will also see that women, we can make a difference. I wanted to be a champion in my village. I could see the girls going to school. I said, I got it, I got it. And I designed those T-shirts and only sold 20 T-shirts, and mostly to my friends. I was devastated. I wanted to make a difference. I really wanted to make a difference. I really wanted to give back to my community, because I realized when I was coming to the US, I was short of $40 for my airfare. In my community, they sold their mangoes, they sold their goats, and I got $40 to come to the US. And here I am, I can't even go back and make that difference. I really wanted to do it. And one day I got a phone call from Oprah Winfrey. And that's the video that you see. Today, in partnership with Oprah Winfrey and Save the Children, we are rebuilding 11 schools in the region, impacting almost 6,000 children. What gives me joy is not my own children. I have my girls. One graduated with a mechanical engineering degree. Another one is doing biological sciences. Another one, she's a freshman at a college. But what gives me joy is when I am home, I see these old men, they come to me holding their 8-year-old babies, and they say, Tererai, can she be just like you? I realized that it was not that the men did not want girls to go to school, but it was mostly poverty. I realized that not only have we improved the quality of education, but we are also transforming communities. Ladies and gentlemen, while we impact many, many schools and many children, we still have problems, because every donor saw us getting that 1.5 million. So today when we say, now, how do we maintain these results? We write grant proposal. The first question is, oh, why don't you go back to Oprah Winfrey? No, we cannot. She gave us a platform. And now I go around planting this dream that our children, because I focus mostly on rural children, our children, they walk 5 miles to 10 miles to school. They spend 6 hours without any food, and most of these children are coming from very poor homes. So today my new dream is to build school cafeterias that would feed and provide nutrition to these children. Most girls, they drop out of school because they are hungry. Most girls, they drop out of school because they don't have sanitary pads. When they go through their monthly periods, they are afraid if they spoil, they get bullied. We need to provide those things. If we really are serious about educating girls, we need to empower their mothers, because when their mothers are employed, they can stand as giants, because I stand on the shoulders of others. I am not going to take any credit for whatever happened in my life, because I had other women and men who looked into my eyes and said, if you believe in these dreams, it is achievable. So I stand on the shoulders of giants. We need funding for our girls. Talk is cheap. I go back to what Nelson Mandela once stated. He said in his autobiography, it is only through education that the daughter of a peasant becomes a doctor, the son of a mine worker becomes the head of a mine, and the child of a farm worker becomes the president of a great nation. Thank you.
Of course, I would like to start by first thanking every single one of you women here on the stage. Your stories were very inspiring, and I'm sure have inspired many people here to want to make that change. And even if they thought it's a small change, it's a minor change, it's just that effort that gets put in, which could move mountains eventually. So I'll jump straight into the questions and go to a question that we received from one of our guests. It says, I believe in women's education before having kids, or only her kids to leave, or leaving the kids to leave university. In between, in my opinion, a mom's priority must be educating her kids. So I guess it's, there's part two to it as well, sorry. Otherwise, she might achieve her dream, but at the expense of the kids. Could you please tell her, how did you cope between studying, working, and educating your kids? So that question is addressed to you, Dr. Tererai.
You know, it is, yes, I agree with you that our priority should be our children. But I want to say that we are seen by our children as role models. And if I am illiterate, what kind of a role model am I to my child? And that was the reason why, for me, I said I needed to have an education so I'll be able to educate my own children. Because we are role models as women.
This question is addressed to all of our panelists here. It is not only girls' empowerment that needs to take place, but also the community's empowerment. Even if education is available, but the communities prohibit their daughters from going to school, what are some of the strategies that can be deployed to create a safe zone for girls in education? And I guess that this is something that Dr. Sakena, you talked about. You talked about how you went kind of to the mullah, to the imam at the mosque, who people trust in the community, and through that were able to educate. But are there any more examples that we can hear about that you have experienced in your career, in your lifetime?
Yes, I think that is very important. It's a very good question, especially when you live in a traditional society that they do not believe in education and they do not want their daughter and their wife to come out of the house. So what I find out through my work, that is from my work experience in Pakistan in the refugee camp, and also during the Taliban underground school. I had 80 underground school, and also even today in Afghanistan. What we find out that, first of all, you have to build this trust between the community. You have to, when you say you are going to do something, you promise something, you deliver that things. Whatever it is. If you are opening a school, or if you are opening a clinic, or whatever you do, when you say something, then you deliver that. Delivering that, what you said, it's really built your credibility. People start trusting you. And when people start trusting you, they come. Even the men who did not want their wife or their daughter to come out, they say, this individual or this organization, they do what they say. You don't promise too big things. Don't say that I'm going to build this school with all furniture, with all chair, with all table, or I'm going to give everybody a stipend that they can have transportation or whatever. You do whatever little thing you do. You say that and then you deliver. That's one thing that you build the trust. A second thing, I think that when you have a safe environment for women, we are a traditional society. We have a women learning center. You know, you might say, well, you are separating men from women, but we have to deal with it. So we have a women learning center. And that women learning center, you only have women. Only you have women. The women come. We have the best teacher. We have the best trainer. We provide facility that they feel safe. They can sit around and chat and talk about whatever issue they want to. And they don't feel threatened. They do not feel that somebody will accuse them of something. Once you build that, the word of mouth goes everywhere. And people keep coming and coming. And also, another thing is that, as we all know, economy is very important. When they come to learn, they are poor, they don't have anything else. They go back home, they will get beaten and they will be fight. What you are going to do there? You left the kids in the house and you don't have anything but. The first thing you do, side by side with education, you have income generation. You teach them a skill. In a society who are very poor like ours, so you teach side by side a skill that while they are learning from this class, they are learning a skill in this class and they are earning income. Once they take that income at home and change the environment in the house, believe me, those husband or those father or those brother will be quiet because that is the key issue for them. And I think there is many, many other examples, but I think that the colleagues wants to talk about it. Yes.
So Maysa, do you have anything to add to this? And Dr. Tererai, of course.
I would just add that in the context of the Arab world, all of those things apply to a lesser extent in some ways, but my experience is that with refugees, as an example, because they are the most disadvantaged group, and the children, as I said earlier, who aren't going to school in the Arab world are largely refugees. What we found is that they want to send their kids to school, but they're not able to. And cost is a huge factor. So we're seeing a big rise in child labor because the parents themselves aren't able to work. So we found that in order for the girls and boys to go to school, we need to make sure that the parents can work, can generate some sort of income. So it needs a holistic approach, and that often works in addition to all the things we said.
There's also, I think there's also a correlation of success between supporting grassroots work and what the government is doing. At times we can do all the work at grassroots level, but if we don't also advocate for policies and things that work at a higher level, then we are doing nothing. So in our country, we work very hard at grassroots level, but we also work very hard at a higher level to make sure that the government policies, they are also in line in supporting what's happening at grassroots level. For many, many decades, our country, we used to have childhood marriages, and it's only this past week that we managed to get a constitution that now prohibits that. But it started at grassroots level where we had to understand the data. At times we need to be supported by the data, and then we hand it over to the government to say, here is the data and these are the gaps. So what can we do? So we need also to be advocates as well at that higher level.
And I'd just like to add one more thing. I believe that it's also about understanding each context separately. It's not a uniform that can be applied to every situation, to every country. It's understanding the communities, understanding the mindsets, the culture, the traditions, and then seeing how are other ways that you could employ and you could deploy in order to support education overall. I'm afraid that I'm going to have to end with this last question, but as I said, you're welcome to ask our speakers anything at the end. A question that could be applied to all three of you as well. Can you talk to us a little bit more about failure, or if I was to rephrase it, learning moments through your journeys? I can see some smiles and nodding, so I'm sure that you've had many of those. If you can share some of them that you think would help people here understand better. Who would like to start?
For us, our learning moments was when we got this grant of 1.5 million. There was this thing within us that, oh, we got this, we can just go in and build the schools. But when we started doing that, we realized the communities were like, what? So we had to pull back and sit down with the community to understand the root causes why parents were not sending their girls to school. And once we understood that, then we started talking about what are some of the positive cultural things that the community practice and how can we use this as we develop our program. And it was quite an eye-opening for us. And the community said, we also want to be part of this strong movement. And instead of us buying bricks, commercial bricks for rebuilding these schools, the communities, they had to mold bricks using their own hands, and we ended up with almost 500,000 bricks that were molded by the community to build the schools.
That's wonderful. I think a lot of failures come around the same issue of community engagement. In the car over here, we were talking about that you know, there's lots of learning and there's lots of research now around how you do effective development and how you deliver education. But we often are in a rush to deliver, and we have deadlines, and we have funders, and you know, we have emergency situations. And the context that perhaps provides a good example here in the Arab world is when the Syrian conflict started over 5 years ago, you know, everyone rushed to raise funds for everything. And there were so many needs, you know, food, shelter, protection for the children, health issues that arose. And at the first instance, everyone forgot about education. Yet we've known for many, many years in the context of war and conflict that education is critical to protecting children. It's critical to making sure that the community stays together, that kids don't lose out on education. So there was a good gap there of a couple of years where there's literally nothing happening to educate those children. There were just grassroots initiatives that weren't being supported by governments and aid agencies. So I think this is a failure that we keep repeating that hopefully we've learned from now and we can, you know, move away from. And we're starting to see, as I mentioned, there's a humanitarian fund that's being developed, and the sole purpose of that is to make sure that we're able to respond to emergency situations much more rapidly. Thank you.
For us, yes, as she said, there are many failures, and we learn from our mistake, and we keep trying to recover. But one thing that really has disappointed me, and I was very upset about it, it was a clinic in a very rural area that they people were supposed to go by donkey and by camel, go from their village to the hospital. By the time they get there, they lost many lives. So as a result, so we pitched in, and whatever we could do, we built a clinic in between about 8 villages that all of them come in one area. And you know what? That we built the clinic, we put the medicine, we did all the things. I could not find a doctor to go there, a woman doctor. And that was really disappointing at me because they were not seeing the men doctor, and I needed a woman doctor, and there wasn't one single woman doctor from the city that I could, even I tried to double, triple their salary to go. They could not go. And you know, you do not believe, for months I was acting as a doctor. I'm a scientist, so I was really seeing patients for a month in that village to try to recover the situation. So it was really, sometimes tear comes to my eyes because it was emergency situation, you know, emergency cases, and I wasn't really professional doctor to do the things. And I had 2 health educators with me, helping me, trying to do that. That here, this clinic is available, but there is no doctor. And that's the reason that as soon as I got out of there, I started building a nursing school and midwife school, and then also doctor assistant, that they can go to villages. And that is that was very sad situation.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I honestly can't thank all three of you women here enough for sharing your passion, for sharing your commitment and your knowledge and experience with the guests here tonight.